good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With two former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
We live in a society right now where everybody's a snowflake, everybody's a cupcake, and everybody thinks that nothing is fair. Everything is like, it's not fair. We should have a better chance. We need more. You know what? I'm old enough to remember when you needed to have a perfect goddamn record to win a college football championship. That's the way it was. 11-1, too bad.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
When you look at Marcus Johnson, when you look at Nikola Jokic, these aren't guys that are big, super athletic, dunking and jumping over people. These are just guys that are clean, skilled footwork, and do things below the rim that make the everyday guy look like it'd be like, I can do that. But you can't, and neither can I.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome in, and a very happy Wednesday to you now, January the 8th. That's right, January the 8th. It is Game Time Decisions here on the SportsGrid Network. I'm Joe Raineri. Appreciate you stopping by as we get ready for a loaded slate and some big-time matchups on the hardwood tonight, both in college basketball as well as the association, as the NBA. A lot of eyes are going to be on one particular game tonight involving, a pretty historic matchup, maybe even a preview, if you will, of what we might get in the NBA Finals, as the Oklahoma City Thunder, currently 30-5 on the season, are heading to Cleveland to take on the Cavs, who are, 31-4 on the season. Both these teams, in fact, coming into this game on double-digit winning streaks right now. Kind of crazy when you think about it, but these are the two best teams, bar none, in the NBA so far this year, and they are going to be on showcase here tonight in the NBA. That game will tip off at 7 p.m. here tonight, as the Cavs are the home favorite, laying right around 2.5 here. So this is a huge game tonight. Pretty good litmus test for both these teams. The Cleveland Cavaliers right now 18-1 at home this season. Meanwhile, the Oklahoma City Thunder coming off of big wins against both the New York Knicks and the Boston Celtics at home. Well, now they got to take this on the road and go to one of the most difficult places to win in the NBA. And believe it or not, it's the Cleveland Cavaliers. And to add just a little spice to it, it's so nice to talk about Cleveland and not having anything to do with one LeBron James. No, he is stuck in L.A. with the Lakers, who, can get trounced by the backups of the Dallas Mavericks. But that's old news. We're worrying about some of these other games that we've got tonight. Let's switch it over to college basketball. Now that we have conference play coming up here over the next month or so, man, have we got some good ones here. And how about UConn, the two-time defending national champions, heading to Philly to take on Villanova. And both of these teams have had certainly their ups and downs so far this year. Both of these teams were expected to be, maybe just a little bit better than what they have been. And yet, your eyes are not deceiving you. And no, the graphics guys did not screw that up. That is Villanova as a favorite here over the two-time defending champs. And boy, oh boy, it just feels like the books are begging you to take the UConn Huskies in this one. Unfortunately for UConn, they are dealing with some injuries, and namely to one of their best and leading scorers who will not be available to them, not just tonight, but we're talking weeks, not days. Liam McNeely, the freshman, has a high ankle sprain. He has by far been their engine for this UConn team. He is the guy that they have turned to score when they need it. And after finishing in last place to open the season at the Maui Invitational, they managed to go and then rip off 8 straight wins. And my goodness, Villanova, who started the season 3-4, well, they've won 7 of their last 8. So both of these teams are coming in on a high note. The problem with UConn is they played the last game without McNeely, and that was at home against Providence, who's not very good. And they were trailing by as many as 14 points in that game before they pulled out a 3-point win as a 14.5-point favorite. There are some concerns about this UConn team and roster. While Caravan is not the go-to guy that many people thought he was going to be, Aiden Mahaney has not lived up to expectations since he transferred from St. Mary's. Jaden Ross, Jalen Stewart have been inconsistent, to say the least, for Hurley. Listen, they have all the talent in the world, but right now, all eyes are going to be on Kyle Neptune tonight. And, of course, Mr. Dixon, they call him. That's right. He is going to be the guy that Villanova is going to look to. Why? Because the man is a scoring machine. Eric Dixon, feel like now he's in his 12th year in college basketball. I kid, but it feels like he's been at Villanova forever. But he leads the country in scoring, just about 26 points per game. He actually hasn't dropped below 25 points since the end of November. This is a guy that is consistently the go-to guy for Villanova, and he is one that elevates everybody else around him. I'm not a big fan of Kyle Neptune. I think Hurley certainly can outcoach him. The question is, can Hurley's guys deal with Eric Dixon in a way that will allow them to win this game? The market seems to think so, as Villanova historically, including this year, has been an impossible place to win games on the road as the visiting team. We're going to see here if whether or not UConn has what it takes to get it done. Looking very forward to that game. We also have a couple of teams coming off of absolutely embarrassing, and I mean embarrassing losses. And you don't have to look any further than Norman, Oklahoma, as OU, the Oklahoma Sooners, back home after a absolute drubbing by Alabama over the weekend, and I mean embarrassing loss too. Oklahoma was one of the few remaining undefeated teams in the country until they ran into Alabama, and Alabama reminded them that, yeah, settle down. Welcome to the SEC here, my friends, and they actually got smoked. The problem with Texas A&M here is that Buzz Williams has already told us that Taylor, their leading scorer, and of course the captain, the guy that makes the engine run for Texas A&M, apparently has some sort of undisclosed injury, so he won't be going here tonight for the Aggies. Interesting. But what that means is no Wade Taylor and no Zurich Phelps, the two leading guys for Texas A&M. I think this gives OU a pretty good opportunity to get back on track with a big W. The money has all been coming in on OU here tonight, and I think it's warranted. I do think they'll handle business at home, a place in which they have not lost yet. And speaking of Alabama, well, they're going to go on the road. And once again, after that drubbing of OU, guess what? They're going to have to go to South Carolina tonight here. And not only are they going to have to go, they're going to have to lay double digits in this game. As you can see, this opened up at 10, guys. This has been bet up to 11 and a half. I preferably look at the overs when I deal with Alabama games, even on the road. We know Alabama can score. We know Nate Oates usually can get these guys to play some semblance of defense, but it just feels like this might be a game in which we're going to be getting a ton of points. I am looking at the over in that one. You also have Arizona State, Kansas. We've got Ole Miss and Arkansas, huh? Look at that, the Calipari era. Not going so well in Arkansas here. We got a lot to talk about in college hoops, much more in the NBA. And, of course, they will play football over the next 48 hours. We'll talk about that as Game Time Decisions continues on the grid.
So my team didn't win this weekend, but I still did with this app that's taking over the game. Sports Millions Pick'em lets you make quick and easy predictions. Pick your favorite players, go higher or lower, and you can still win big even if your team loses. Plus, the multiplier is insane. With just a few picks, you can win big money. So get on it. They've got a welcome bonus to help you start off your winning streak.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circa Sports Million, Circa Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With two former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
It's a new era in CFP to start off this year, put on full display.
My take on this game is simple. I know some people will be upset about it. Good riddance to the Pac-12.
Can you do it in terms of the week to week to week?
I don't see a pathway for this team to miss the college football playoffs.
We want to make sure you have those best bets in the entirety of our betting cards.
That was
Lincoln! But he had that program was already going there!
Only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in Game Time Decisions here on the SportsGrid Network. Joe Raineri, joined by my good friend Mark Zinno here as we get ready for a loaded night on the hardwood here, Zin, in the NBA. And listen, I think the NBA ratings would be much better if we had, I don't know, games with the kind of juice that we're going to have tonight in Cleveland as the Oklahoma City Thunder, just 5 losses on the season, taking on the Cleveland Cavaliers, who have lost just 4 games on the season. Now, this is what I'm talking about. This is the kind of, hopefully, rivalry that we can get around and maybe get a little more interest here. But the Cavs 18-1 at home. We're talking OKC coming off of big wins against Boston, against the Knicks at home. But, man, winning in OKC and winning here in Cleveland, I get why Cleveland's the favorite. They should be, but are we betting them here tonight to win this game?
I mean, I would. I looked at this game a little bit differently when you look at kind of what is the expected sort of outcome. I would, if you forced me to pick a side, I would take Cleveland at home. Just because they've been that good and that dominant. But, the total for this game has gone up, and up. And these are two of the best defenses in the league. Like, if this is going to be a playoff-type atmosphere, and Cleveland is going to end up having, a way to win this game, I think their defense shows out. I looked at the first half under. I mean, this total is up at 230.5. Now, our first half is up to 118. That's a huge number. So both teams are getting to 60 in the first half against two of the best defensive teams in the league. I think there's just a little bit more of a sort of pace war involved in this thing when you look at it. I mean, I understand both these teams play fast, but, it's one of those things for both of these teams to get to 60. A lot of shots have to fall. And I just think these defenses are too good for that to happen on a routine basis. You may see a little bit longer of a shot clock kind of deal with some of these guys. They make the extra pass and look for a clear shot or a lane or things of that nature. And I think when I look at this, I think it's going to be more defensive than people expect.
They are, I mean, Zim, we probably shouldn't overthink it, right? They are the two best teams in the NBA. I mean, bar none, basically, right? I don't, at this point in the season, I would be okay saying this could very well be a preview of the NBA Finals. This would not shock me in the least bit.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it would be a great finals, right? I think it's going to be a great game tonight. It's just interesting to see how, how this thing unfolds here. But Cleveland, again, has continued to, assert their dominance over everybody. And that's kind of where this whole thing is for me. It's just that, Oklahoma City has been great, but they sort of live and die by the three. And if you're asking me about this game and if it's really going to go the way I think it's going to go, then Cleveland's defense on the perimeter probably would have a good measure of success tonight. And I'm hoping so, at least early.
Yeah, listen, it wouldn't also shock me if Cleveland wins the first half, given that Oklahoma City, we've seen these fourth quarter, they seem to be really good, trailing at the end of the third into the fourth and make these unbelievable comebacks in the second half. If that holds true, I don't know that they're going to be able to come back here tonight against Cleveland, but I'd be willing to throw a little something on Cleveland having that lead when they get going. What is happening with the Knicks here, by the way? You would think Toronto is, hey, good time to get back on track, but 3 consecutive terrible losses here. What are we doing with the Knicks here?
I wanted to play this game so badly. I played on the Knicks the other night against the Orlando Magic and just thinking that their defense would show up and keep the Orlando Magic under 100. Well, they held the Magic to 103 in a game that Karl-Anthony Towns sat out late, and the Knicks were offensively pathetic throughout that game. So I think they bounced back. Do I really want to lay 11 right now? No. Here's honestly, like, this is the way I would play this game. I would look at this game and go, if the Knicks don't start out fast, the natives are going to get very restless in Madison Square Garden very, very quickly. And if that's the case, then guess what? The Boo Birds are going to rain down, and it's going to be a long night for the Knicks. And so from that standpoint, I go, okay, they need to start fast. They know they need to start fast. And I would hope that they can get out to a quick 3.5 point lead at the end of one. That's just kind of the way I would look at it to avoid the headache of this whole game and really how the game could play out a variety of different ways. I expect the Knicks to start fast. Toronto starts slow. They always do. And I think that this is really a spot here where they can take advantage. I mean, that's kind of just the way I look at it.
Yeah, and listen, I think they should be able to take advantage and get it done here tonight if we think they are who they are. We watched, Denver last night, right? Yeesh, no, Jokic, I believe, was a late scratch there. They are at home welcoming in the Clippers here tonight. It's good to see Kawhi back. They're trying to get him up to speed. It may take a little while here with the Clippers, but I mean, -2 for the Clippers tells me they have no intention of the Joker playing in this game here tonight, which makes me wonder if we're really getting to 224 points.
I mean, that's the way I would go with it. But, Denver at elevation here, getting points at home seems very, very hard to pass up. Kawhi Leonard actually not playing tonight. I think his family in the wildfires, he had to leave the team and go.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
So the PJ Tucker also not playing in this game. So overall, low scoring, I think, is kind of the way this thing ends up going.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to the late game here tonight. I want to say late game, one of the last games on the board here between Milwaukee taking on the San Antonio Spurs. I mean, listen, San Antonio getting 5.5 here. I haven't seen them lose a lot more. Look at that, down to 4 now. I haven't seen San Antonio getting blown out here by these kinds of numbers here. It feels like a good spot maybe to back the Spurs.
Yeah, I mean, look, they're a much improved team, right? But again, it's like it's almost to me like take San Antonio on the money line and forget the 4 points, because the two outcomes that I feel most likely is Milwaukee wins big or San Antonio wins outright, right? Like if you're going to play San Antonio here, you may as well sprinkle a little on the money line just for a goof, like unit between the spread and the money line, because I think there's a real good chance that San Antonio could win the game. But other than that, if Milwaukee gets out to a big lead, does San Antonio really have the ability to play catch up? I'm not 100% sure.
Feels like I should be betting the over in that game too at 225.5. Right? It just feels like that could be a whole lot of fun to watch as it gets to 250. All right, we'll get back more from Mark Zinno when Game Time Decisions continues here on the Grid.
Just 3 games left in this historic college football season. Thursday, Notre Dame.
Notre Dame is definitely one of the top teams in the nation.
Clash with Penn State. Friday, Ohio State looks to slow down the Horns, with the Buckeyes favored to top Texas.
You know what I see? 2 similar plays. Jackpot. Jerry. I'm limbo for a big man.
Follow along for every play and every bet with in-game live game day, only on SportsGrid.
Statement from Giants president John Mara. Joe Shane and Brian Daboll will continue in their respective roles with the organization. As disappointing as the results of the season have been, Steve Tisch and I remain confident in the process that Joe and Brian have implemented.
The Giants, an absolute train wreck, and I love it.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
This was a team that you should have dominated. You've now lost 4 straight. You're heading into the playoffs and you're searching for answers, not just in terms of your offensive line, but your quarterback now.
I just don't see this team peaking at the right time. It was almost like we were anointing Mike Tomlin as the best coach in the NFL 12 or 13 weeks in. Then once they got to the real competition and the attrition started to settle in, it's just not a good football team.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Louis Riddick has interviewed for every job in North America. And I'm not just talking football. I'm talking about every business in North America of any kind whatsoever. Tire companies, grocery store CEOs, shopping malls, insurance companies. What job hasn't Louis Riddick interviewed for?
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in. Game Time Decisions here on this Wednesday. Welcome in. Plenty to look forward to here, not just tonight, but, of course, this week, as we've got 4 teams left before we can crown a national champion in college football. Plus, it's wild card weekend in the NFL. And joining us once again, our good friend Mark Zinno here. And Zin, love this week here. We get a little dose of the Orange Bowl and Cotton Bowl over the next 48 hours. And then, of course, right into Wild Card Weekend. in the NFL. What are you more excited about? More chalk in college football or the NFL this week, you think?
Well, I'm curious to see how these college games play out. I mean, I'm going to step in front of Notre Dame for the third consecutive game, and hopefully I'm finally right at this point in time. I haven't seen anything from Notre Dame's offense that makes me believe that they can go out and win a game. Like, they've been very, very fortunate in their two games. If Jeremiah Love doesn't break that 98-yard touchdown, how much different does that game look? Because Indiana lost it all right there. They got behind and they panicked and everything fell apart for them really quickly. And then outside of the sack fumble at the end of the first half and then the opening kickoff return for a touchdown, what real offense did Notre Dame have against Georgia? I mean, if we can concede that Georgia and Penn State's offenses are the same, and I don't really think they are. Penn State is probably statistically better in a lot of categories. What is Notre Dame's offense really going to be able to accomplish here? If Penn State doesn't beat themselves, I think they're the better team. Like, everybody keeps talking about, James Franklin, the record against, this, that, and the other. Is Notre Dame really a top 10 team? Maybe, but I don't know if they are a top 5 team. And they are like of that ilk of what we saw this year from Oregon, what we saw from Texas, what we saw from, Ohio State all year long. Like, I don't think they're of that same level. And so if Penn State doesn't beat themselves and they can run the football and play defense and they can get out to a lead, that's the biggest thing. If you force Riley Leonard to have to throw this team back into the game, they're dead in the water, Notre Dame. The huge offensive advantages definitively with Penn State and huge quarterback advantages with Drew Aller and Penn State. And so if they can't figure out a way to get past Notre Dame's defense, and if they can have some success running the football, then I think they're going to be okay here. I genuinely do. So I think the game script is really important. I think it'll be really tight early. I think both these teams will not want to make the first mistake, and whichever team can make more plays early on is going to have a huge advantage, because it's one of those games where I don't know if the team that leads ever really relinquishes the lead.
Yeah, I know the under keeps getting bet, but those are two really good defenses. The defenses are better than the offenses here. I think that game will show it. I don't think there will be any defense played, however, in the NFL when it comes to the Commanders in Tampa Bay. Something tells me, Zim, we could get a wild shootout. Listen, I think experience matters in the NFL, especially in the wild card. Clearly, Tampa has it at home and Washington doesn't. Next year, Washington, I don't know. Are you thinking they got a shot to pull out the outright upset here?
I mean, I've said this. I said the best version of Washington is better than the best version of Tampa Bay. Here's the real rub. You're talking about quarterbacks making their first playoff start against quarterbacks who have playoff experience. Jaden Daniels' first playoff start. Baker Mayfield playoff experience. 1937-1 against the number since 2002, and 19-38 straight up. So when those quarterbacks with less experience play on the road, they're 11-21 straight up, 12-19-1 ATS. So there's a huge edge here for Tampa having played and Baker having been in this scenario before in the postseason. Does that mean it works out that way? I don't know. I mean, again, it's one of those things. If I'm Washington, I got to get up early. I got to force Tampa Bay to play from behind, and I got to try to attack that secondary and make them figure out a way to slow down the passing game of Jaden Daniels. I think ultimately that boils down to. So, and it's interesting the number is sitting at 3. Like, if you had 3.5, it feels like you have to play Washington. It could come down to a field goal game. I mean, the Buccaneers just struggled with the Saints, for crying out loud, last weekend. So they're a very up and down team. The biggest rub is Dan Quinn. If he makes one of these stupid gambles, early in the game, it could hurt the Commanders and they can't get out of that hole.
Are we expecting the Bills to do anything other than win here, Zay?
Huge coaching advantage in Denver, right? And that's what scares me. I've said repeatedly. Josh Allen not only has to beat the team on the other side of the field, he's got to overcome his coach making dumb decisions and hurting him, because that's really what has held Josh Allen back, in my opinion, in these games, especially tight games against the Chiefs and especially tight games in the playoffs. Like, it really is about whether, Sean McDermott can manage these situations. So I think Buffalo should roll, but always got a question.
You heard it. Zin, enjoy the games, brother. We'll talk to you again. Game Time Decisions continues on the grid.
just 3 games left in this historic college football season. Thursday, Notre Dame.
Notre Dame is definitely one of the top teams in the nation.
Clash with Penn State. Friday, Ohio State looks to slow down the Horns, with the Buckeyes favored to top Texas.
You know what I see? 2 similar plays. Jackpot. Cherry. Come on, limbo for a big man.
Follow along for every play and every bet with in-game live game day, only on SportsGrid.
Statement from Giants president John Mara. Joe Shane and Brian Daboll will continue in their respective roles with the organization. As disappointing as the results of the season have been, Steve Tisch and I remain confident in the process that Joe and Brian have implemented.
The Giants, an absolute train wreck, and I love it.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
This was a team that you should have dominated. You've now lost 4 straight. You're heading into the playoffs and you're searching for answers, not just in terms of your offensive line, but your quarterback now.
I just don't see this team peaking at the right time. It was almost like we were anointing Mike Tomlin as the best coach in the NFL 12 or 13 weeks in. Then once they got to the real competition and the attrition started to settle in, it's just not a good football team.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Louis Riddick has interviewed for every job in North America. And I'm not just talking football. I'm talking about every business in North America of any kind whatsoever. Tire companies, grocery store CEOs, shopping malls, insurance companies. What job hasn't Louis Riddick interviewed for?
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in here. Game Time Decisions, and we put out an APB. We were searching high and low for CT Betts and Kenny White, and we found them, guys. You don't want to know where we found them, but we did find them, and they are back here to talk some college football as well as some NFL as we get ready for Wild Card Weekend, as well as being that much closer to crowning a national champion. So, gents, welcome back in. And CT, let me start at the Orange Bowl here, man. Tomorrow night, as we've got Notre Dame and Penn State going toe-to-toe. Listen, the market has it almost like a coin flip. 2.5 here for Notre Dame. Total saw a lot of under money come in, 45.5. Break it down for me, my man. Who wins this game?
Yeah, I like Penn State here, Joe. I originally thought I was going to like ND. And, the past couple of days, I started liking Penn State more and more. And I did. I bet some Penn State plus 2.5. And somebody came in and smashed that in the last couple of days because last I checked, it was down to 1.5. And, Joe, I thought that ND's offensive performance against the Dogs was very limited. And that's pretty obvious. It's a totally different ball game. If the walk-on doesn't get the sideline penalty there when Kirby lost his mind, then 13 of the 24 points that they had come within a minute. The field goal, the strip fumble, and then the kick return. I mean, that's just they didn't. Outside of that, I mean that was the game right there. And they got a few very capable running backs. And Love, he got banged up. I know he's going to play, but they're going to rely on Price a lot more now, not having Love full strength. Their biggest run came from Riley Leonard. He ripped off a 32-yarder. And the longest pass play of the game, Joe, for Notre Dame was 14 yards. 14 yards for Riley Leonard. I think these teams are very similar. Both great defenses. They both can run the ball, and they both have serviceable trigger men. But I give the advantage to the Lions in the run game. And I think it's a significant advantage with the trigger man. Defenses are about equal, in my opinion, even though with Notre Dame slightly rated a little higher. I still think that the Lions D is right there. Only disadvantage, and yeah, it's a big one.
that Notre Dame has over the Nittany Lions is coaching, and that does scare me a lot. I like to bash James Franklin quite a bit. My brother went to Penn State, and I make fun of him all the time for Franklin not being able to get the job done. Abdul Carter, I don't think he's going to be clearly he's not going to be at full strength, Joe. He's going to play. I don't know how effective he's going to be. I think it might be more of a decoy. But my handicap didn't involve my handicap had Abdul out anyways here. I think that the defensive line for the Nittany Lions held up just fine and stopped Genty, the number one running back in the country, quote unquote, Joe. That 100 yards wasn't really 100 yards in my opinion. I think Franklin finally gets the job done here, and we see Penn State into the championship game.
It's amazing the coaches that are left here, Kenny, and the narrative surrounding them can all be changed in another game or two here, and we'll talk about them in a totally different light. But tell me I'm wrong. Please tell me that the defenses aren't the best units on the field for both teams.
Hey, Joe, that's what I got to tell you. And CT, when he was talking about Penn State, I thought he was making a case for my under. I thought that's what he was talking about. Notre Dame, they scored 17 points in 54 seconds. In the other 59 minutes of the football game, they had 13 points or 9 points. 6 points, if I can do the math right. So, yeah, CT's right. This offense really struggled. And the only times that Notre Dame scored this year was against bad football teams. That's who they beat up. But they scored 23 against Texas A&M. They scored 14 against Northern Illinois, who has a good defense. They scored 28 against Miami of Ohio, who has a good defense, but it's a MAC team. They scored 27 against Indiana and 23 against Georgia. This offense is not a dynamic offense. And Marcus Freeman's a defensive guy. He's a defensive coordinator by trade. He's very conservative, and it shows by Riley Leonard's stats. Riley Leonard throws the ball 25 times per game and runs it 11. And the rest of the plays in that team is run by the running back. So they're going to run the ball 60% of the time. James Franklin, another conservative football coach. Drew Aller this year, median 22 passes per game. They run it more than 50% of the time, and that's what you're going to see out of both these teams. And CT's right. The defenses are pretty equal. I have Notre Dame third best in the country, Penn State number 4. Median points allowed. Notre Dame 13 against every team that they played on the road, 14 against every team they played in the entire season. And then Penn State, 12 points per game they allowed on median in their entire schedule. These two defenses are for real. I went under the 47, and I would never tell you to go under a bad number unless it's still a good play. It's still a good play under 45.
Yeah, I took it in the first half as well, Kenny, because I just think it's going to be a rock fight in this one coming up. And maybe the worst part about this game is that no matter who wins, it's going to make the committee look like they knew what they were talking about, because to end up with Penn State or Notre Dame in the national championship game, the committee's going to look like geniuses. And then you got, of course, the Cotton Bowl, Ohio State taking on Texas. And listen, CT, the minute that Ohio State blew out Oregon, we knew, boy, there was going to probably be some value on Texas here because the whole world's going to run and bet Ohio State. Doesn't mean they're wrong, but what do you think we get in this game? Now down to what, 5.5?
Yeah, so Joe, this is what I did in this game, and Kenny's the numbers guy, and he's my guy that I rely on for a lot of numbers. So he could probably run the math a little bit better, but I did it here on the fly, and both of you guys know that I'm really high on this Buckeyes team, and I told you both I think the best thing for the Buckeyes was losing that game to Michigan. I thought that was going to make them come back better than ever, and it did. So what I did with Joe, I have a bunch of Buckeyes futures already. I have them 5-1, 4-1, 3.5-1. What I did here, because I didn't want to lay 6.5, I played Ohio State minus 105 to win the whole thing. I think that's going to be a better number than what you're going to get in the money line parlay carryover, because right now you're seeing about minus 230, minus 235 in the market. And I think it's going to be around minus 265, minus 270. Versus either Penn State or Notre Dame. So I think minus 105 will end up being is a very fair price. And I think that will end up being better in the money line rollover parlay. So that's what I did, Joe. So for my breakdown on this here, I mean, they were calling for Ryan Day's head after the game, right? You know, the idiot fans, they were saying that Day shouldn't step foot in Ohio again. I mean, complete morons. He's one of the best recruiters and best coaches in the nation, and it's not even close. And Will Howard, who I never doubted, is just absolutely dialed in. Chip Kelly and Ryan Day are finally on the same page. The play calling has been phenomenal, and Chip's been aggressive. And you cannot cover the drag routes, Joe. They've gone back to the old school ways when it was Stroud, Olave, and Wilson. They have the wide receivers. You cannot cover them. You saw Dan Lanning's head was spinning, guys. He didn't know what hit him. And that's what you're going to get. If that team shows up, the team that showed up versus Tennessee and Oregon, they're going to be very, very tough to beat. And Ewers is clearly very hurt. He's not 100%. They're not going to be able to run the ball. That's going to make them one-dimensional. And I like the Buckeyes' defensive backs and safeties' chances to stop those Texas wideouts. I think Ohio State wins this game. And again, yeah, is there value on Texas? Yeah, because the line is probably a little high just because of what we've seen from the Buckeyes the last two games. Probably a little overreaction.
So, hey, listen, if you can get Ohio State and you like them to win this in the national championship, now would be the time to jump on it. All right, when we come back, Kenny, I want to ask you about the numbers. And I also want to ask you, because I am seeing a cardinal rule being broken when betting college football. I'll ask you about it when Game Time Decisions continues on the grid.
Just 3 games left in this historic college football season. Thursday, Notre Dame.
Notre Dame is definitely one of the top teams in the nation.
Clash with Penn State. Friday, Ohio State looks to slow down the Horns, with the Buckeyes favored to top Texas.
You know what I see? 2 similar plays? Jackpot, cherry. Remember for a big man.
Follow along for every play and every bet with in-game live game day, only on SportsGrid.
Statement from Giants president John Mara. Joe Shane and Brian Daboll will continue in their respective roles with the organization. As disappointing as the results of the season have been, Steve Tisch and I remain confident in the process that Joe and Brian have implemented.
The Giants, an absolute train wreck, and I love it.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
This was a team that you should have dominated. You've now lost 4 straight. You're heading into the playoffs and you're searching for answers, not just in terms of your offensive line, but your quarterback now.
I just don't see this team peaking at the right time. It was almost like we were anointing Mike Tomlin as the best coach in the NFL 12 or 13 weeks in. Then once they got to the real competition and the attrition started to settle in, it's just not a good football team.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Louis Riddick has interviewed for every job in North America. And I'm not just talking football. I'm talking about every business in North America of any kind whatsoever. Tire companies, grocery store CEOs, shopping malls, insurance companies. What job hasn't Louis Riddick interviewed for?
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Back in Game Time Decisions. We got 2 of the best with us here. CT Bets, Chris Thurston, as well as the Wizard, Kenny White, talking college football playoffs. We'll talk some of the NFL bets that we like this week. But, Kenny, let me get your thoughts on this Ohio State and Texas game. You ran the numbers here. They're just, without a doubt, value on Texas. Now, whether that's warranted, this number, or not, we saw 5.5. I still think there's maybe a 6 or 2 out there. Who do you like in this side, and is the value enough to actually take the 6 points right now?
Well, Joe, CT took so long, I had to jump into a beer pong game real quick. And I'm going to finish the rest of my beer, and then I'll let you know who I like in my Texas game. So yeah, I absolutely love that. I don't absolutely love, I shouldn't say. I didn't want to bore your listeners and your followers with another under, but I do like the game under because what something CT said is so correct, that when you lose, you learn more about yourself. And Ohio State learned a ton about themselves against Michigan. And what was that? Don't be conservative. Throw the football down the field. Let your quarterback throw the football. Yep. And they've been much better the last 2 games. But you know what? Texas has only lost twice this year. And that was against Georgia. No one else in the country has beaten Texas but Georgia, and Texas really outplayed Georgia the second time, and that was with their quarterback. So these are 2 really good football teams. I think Texas's advantage right now is going to be the offensive and defensive lines. I think they're slightly better on both. Not much, slightly better. I think Howard's a little better quarterback than Ewers, though. So I think I'm in the game 3. Ohio State 3. I think they win by 3. I'm taking the points.
Once again, committee looks like geniuses no matter who wins and advances to the national championship game. All right, so Kenny, let me come back to you before you start drinking when CT goes. Let's switch over to the NFL because we have a pretty interesting one happening between Pittsburgh and Baltimore. And a lot of people scratching their head going, how is this almost a double-digit spread right now? Well, anybody that's watched Pittsburgh over the last month, it should not be a surprise. How do you approach this game?
Yeah, I don't want to lay that many points in a playoff game, especially when it's the 3rd time you've played this year. If you go back over time, these division rival games do go to the underdog usually. So there's too much familiarity in this game. There's going to be some type of trick play here or there for Pittsburgh. This total was bet down because people think there's going to be bad weather. I don't think the weather is going to be that bad. 30 degrees and the wind's going to drop to less than 10 miles an hour. Snow in the morning, but at nighttime it should be just fine. I went over when you got the Baltimore Ravens, their median score on the year, 30-24, but it even gets better at home. The Ravens average on median 34 points per game. That's almost a total by itself. They give up 23. On the other side, Pittsburgh on the road, they lose 27-19. Both figures add up over the total. You're going to see this total go back up when you see the weather clears up and people realize that. So I'd get it now.
Don't talk to me about weather. I woke up here. It was 55 degrees this morning, Kenny. I had to turn the heat on. CT, let me ask you. There's another interesting game. I guess narrative's playing a role. Texans at home, taking on the Chargers. Can the Chargers and Harbaugh do something, well, his predecessor couldn't do, and that's keep winning games in the playoffs here? What do you think we're going to get in this one?
Yeah, this is my best bet wild card weekend, Joe, and I think the Texans are getting pretty disrespected here. And I get it. I know that the Chargers, they won 6 road games this year, but take a look at who they were against. The Panthers, the Broncos before they started playing well, the Browns, the Falcons, the Patriots, and Vegas. They beat one playoff team on the road, and that was the Bronchies before they really started getting rolling and clicking here. And I know the Texans didn't exactly finish strong, and everyone's real last memory of them is getting blown out on Christmas Day to Baltimore. But they did move the ball, and they just were a complete disaster in the red zone. They ran into a healthy and a rolling Ravens team. They're finally healthy, the Texans now. Everyone wrote them off last year in this exact spot versus the Browns, and they were puppies, and they rocked and rolled at home 45-14. I think the playoff experience in Houston here has a really good chance to pull off a home upset here. So I played the Texans +3.
One of the most profitable teams to back in the first half. If it ain't broken, CT, I'm with you. Give me Texans to have that lead at the break as well. Kenny, talk to me here about this Minnesota Rams game. A lot of folks think the dog that's going to win outright may be coming from this game with the Rams. What do you say?
Yeah, my game time decision, Joe, is the Vikings. I think they're better offensively. I know they're better offensively, that's for sure. When you look at the points the Rams put up this year, averaging 20 points per game on median, and they allowed 22 and a half. It's amazing that they really got outscored and ended up with a winning record on the season. Their biggest games were ones they won and blowouts. They lost the close games, the games that mean something. Minnesota just played a playoff game, and we talk about teams learning more about themselves off a loss than a win. It's the Minnesota Vikings. They lost everything from the 1 seed down to the 5 seed, or they might have been the 2 seed. Philly probably would have gotten it because of tiebreakers, but that was a big loss for them. The Rams played the Seahawks. Nobody played for the Rams. They could have cared less. They didn't learn anything from that game. They went through the motions. The Vikings played a playoff game already. The Vikings are better offensively. They're better defensively. And you know the Ram fans, they're going to show up in the first quarter and they're going to leave at halftime.
You and I both know that. Great home field advantage. All right, CT, yeah. I understand Jalen Hurts limited to practice today, but at practice today. And quite honestly, I don't care if he plays or he doesn't play. I don't see what the hubbub about Philly is here. You like him?
Yeah, I do. He's going to go, and they're finally going to be healthy. 22 of 22 starters gonna go for the Birds, and Love's taking some shots. Last couple of weeks, he's dinged up. Gulls have too many weapons on both sides of the ball. I made this game a little higher, Joe, and I think the Eagles soar into the divisional round weekend.
All right, CT bets, Chris Thurston, Kenny White, minus 120. Kenny wins the beer pong game. We'll be back here on Game Time Decisions.
Just 3 games left in this historic college football season. Thursday, Notre Dame.
Notre Dame is definitely one of the top teams in the nation.
Clash with Penn State. Friday, Ohio State looks to slow down the Horns, with the Buckeyes favored to top Texas.
You know what I see? 2 similar plays. Jackpot. Cherry. I'm nimble for a big man.
Follow along for every play and every bet with in-game live game day, only on SportsGrid.
Statement from Giants president John Mara. Joe Shane and Brian Daboll will continue in their respective roles with the organization. As disappointing as the results of the season have been, Steve Tisch and I remain confident in the process that Joe and Brian have implemented.
The Giants, an absolute train wreck, and I love it.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
This was a team that you should have dominated. You've now lost 4 straight. You're heading into the playoffs and you're searching for answers, not just in terms of your offensive line, but your quarterback now.
I just don't see this team peaking at the right time. It was almost like we were anointing Mike Tomlin as the best coach in the NFL 12 or 13 weeks in. Then once they got to the real competition and the attrition started to settle in, it's just not a good football team.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Louis Riddick has interviewed for every job in North America. And I'm not just talking football. I'm talking about every business in North America of any kind whatsoever. Tire companies, grocery store CEOs, shopping malls, insurance companies. What job hasn't Louis Riddick interviewed for?
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back as we look to close out this hour of Game Time Decisions. We got much more to get to, including a great slate in college basketball as well as the NBA. Let's not forget the NHL. We got plenty to talk about, but let's hear a little more about this week's Sports Millions Pick'em. We got a big wild card weekend, and here's a couple of looks here that you might not have thought about.
Definitely a lot of ways we can go with our Sports Millions picks today, Tom, but I'm excited to see both of us with a limited slate out there on the ice have turned to looking at some matchups out there on the football field. I'll be looking at tomorrow's game in the Orange Bowl, and I know that you're going to look ahead to the Denver Broncos matchup with the Buffalo Bills. So why don't you get us started?
Yeah, we got a huge weekend of football coming up, both for college and the NFL. Let's get into this Denver at Buffalo game. And let's turn to Bo Nix, quarterback for the Denver Broncos. I've spoken about his passing attempts on various shows across SportsGrid, but I also like his passing yards. And what it comes down to is, we see Denver as large road underdogs, so they just should be trailing, which should put them in a passing game script. But we've also seen Denver really, really struggle at running the ball, and specifically in the last week of the regular season, they blow out the Chiefs. They're up, wire to wire the entire game, and they don't have a single running back get to 50 rushing yards with the 3 running backs they have, and Bo Nix is leading the team in rushing. They simply cannot run the ball. So the ball's just going to be in Bo Nix's hand time and time again. So I like his passing attempts. I also like his passing yards at higher than 219 and a half. They're going to be playing from behind. He's averaging 222 in the season. So when it's all said and done, if they're playing from behind and they struggle at running the ball, even in the ideal circumstances, as we saw last week versus the Chiefs, Bo Nix is just going to have to pass the ball if Denver's going to stay even close in this game with the Bills.
I absolutely love where you're going with Bo Nix. I think it's such a strong way to look at him here. And when I look at the Orange Bowl, we've got a really interesting matchup between these two teams. Notre Dame taking on Penn State. And this is one, Tom, where I want to focus on Riley Leonard. Now, Riley Leonard, such a strong dual threat quarterback out there. We know his legs will be the way that they will be able to beat Penn State because Love, their main running back out there, isn't 100%. He does have that knee brace on, and we look at him in that last game versus Georgia. He wasn't able to get things done on the ground, but when we looked at Riley Leonard, he came out phenomenally strong on the ground versus Georgia. Now he's going to be under a lot of pressure here from Penn State's defense. This is a defense that's going to put all of that pressure on him, but there's still question marks on if Abdul Carter will play, and without Abdul Carter out there, and even if he does play not at 100%, I think Riley Leonard has every ability to get out of the pocket with that pressure and put those yards up. So I'm going to take Riley Leonard higher than 49.5 rushing yards in this matchup versus Penn State, Tom.
I think that's a great look. Should be a close game. Obviously, we've seen the line move just a little bit, but I think we're in for an awesome week of football, starting off on Thursday, running all the way to Monday. I'm ready for it.
I'm absolutely ready for it, too. And you guys make sure you join us back here tomorrow on GameTime Decisions for another Sports Million Picks.
All right, Joe and Tom, we appreciate it as always, and I'm with you. This is going to be one heck of a start to the NFL postseason here. Wild card weekend should deliver, and maybe, just maybe, unlike the regular season in which the chalk had been most profitable to back, maybe now is the time some of the dogs come barking in the playoffs in the NFL. We shall see soon enough. We also have plenty of opportunities here tonight to jump in where maybe a dog or two will be barking, especially in college basketballs. We've got plenty of great games getting ready to tip off here coming up this hour. We're going to dive in to, how about Indiana? Anybody see what's happening with the Hoosiers here tonight, who have a pretty good opportunity to take another one at home as they welcome in USC. Some of these teams traveling from the west to the east hasn't been working out all that well. And also these former Pac-12 teams in college basketball, maybe, just maybe, not exactly used to the physicality of the Big Ten. And we have seen some of these teams struggle a little bit more. Teams like USC with a bunch of guards and forwards and not a whole lot of brute force there. They're going to struggle here. They might very well struggle tonight against Indiana, who will have no problem pushing them around and imposing their will. So we got much more to get to here as Game Time Decisions. Getting ready for another hour. Come back and join us here on the SportsGrid Network.
Just 3 games left in this historic college football season. Thursday, Notre Dame.
Notre Dame is definitely one of the top teams in the nation.
Clash with Penn State. Friday, Ohio State looks to slow down the Horns, with the Buckeyes favored to top Texas.
You know what I see? 2 similar plays. Jackpot. Cherry. I'm nimble for a big man.
Follow along for every play and every bet with in-game live game day, only on SportsGrid.
Statement from Giants president John Mara. Joe Shane and Brian Daboll will continue in their respective roles with the organization. As disappointing as the results of the season have been, Steve Tisch and I remain confident in the process that Joe and Brian have implemented.
The Giants, an absolute train wreck, and I love it.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
This was a team that you should have dominated. You've now lost 4 straight. You're heading into the playoffs and you're searching for answers, not just in terms of your offensive line, but your quarterback now.
I just don't see this team peaking at the right time. It was almost like we were anointing Mike Tomlin as the best coach in the NFL 12 or 13 weeks in. Then once they got to the real competition and the attrition started to settle in, it's just not a good football team.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Louis Riddick has interviewed for every job in North America. And I'm not just talking football. I'm talking about every business in North America of any kind whatsoever. Tire companies, grocery store CEOs, shopping malls, insurance companies. What job hasn't Louis Riddick interviewed for?
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in Game Time Decisions here on the SportsGrid Network. A very happy Wednesday to you here as we're getting ready for playoffs. That's right, playoffs, not only in college football, but the NFL as well as Wild Card Weekend will be here. Already seeing a whole lot of interesting lines and line movement when it comes to this weekend. We'll talk a lot about some of the games that we're focusing on and targeting, some old rematches between teams like, Baltimore and Pittsburgh. A lot of folks talking about this one here as nearly a double-digit underdog are the Pittsburgh Steelers taking on Lamar Jackson and, of course, the Baltimore Ravens, who are looking much like the Buffalo Bills to do something nobody seems to be able to do these days, and that's, beat the Kansas City Chiefs, who have the number 1 seed and have this week off, a little bye week for them to get rested, and they'll get ready to embark on another Super Bowl title. But is Pittsburgh really 9.5 points worse than the Baltimore Ravens? And I'm sorry, nothing that I have seen from this Pittsburgh Steelers team leads me to believe that we're going to get anything other than maybe another dominating performance by Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. But I will say this, because while a lot of people will quote all of the Mike Tomlin records as an underdog, I want you to keep in mind a couple of things, especially when it comes to the total in this one. These teams have played 9 times since December of 2020. The under in those 9 games is 8-1. So they've gone under in 8 of the 9 times that they have played. There has only been 1 game in which the winner had actually scored more than 20 points. And you know what that game was? That was the last game against the Ravens, in which they bulldozed Pittsburgh for 34 points. But keep in mind, in that game, you had 2 teams, both Pittsburgh, who was actually cooking with Russ there a little bit in the beginning. Both teams went 5 of 7 inside the red zone for touchdowns. We were 3 for 3 on field goals with both teams. There was a defensive score. There was all sorts of crazy things happening in that game. And you know what else happened in that game? Zay Flowers absolutely destroyed the Steelers' man-to-man coverage. Do you know who won't be playing in this game for the Baltimore Ravens? Zay Flowers. I do think the total has been bet down for a reason here. I do not believe Pittsburgh's offense is suddenly going to snap out of this funk they're in, who have not been able to score, 17 points, more than 17 points in any game over the last month. Now, granted, they played the Eagles, the Chiefs, the Ravens, but they also just played a terrible defense in Cincinnati, and they were only able to muster up 17 points. You're talking about two teams that know each other better than anybody. In fact, the Ravens and Lamar Jackson have played a total of 7 playoff games. They're 5-2 to the under in those playoff games. And oh yeah, by the way, not one of those games ever saw more than 44 points. These Ravens are going to be throwing the ball all over the place. They're going to grind it. They're going to Derrick Henry you to death. And they are going to own time of possession and play great defense. I think Russ Wilson has gone from cooking to being cooked. And unfortunately for the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think this is the part of the show in which you all start to scratch your head and going, I can't believe I really thought Russell Wilson was going to be the savior of our franchise. He will not be. And this will be a very lackluster, I believe, offensive performance once again from Pittsburgh. All leads me to believe that nobody knows it better. It's a marathon, not a sprint for Harbaugh. I expect that defense, and I expect the Ravens to do exactly what they need to do in order to ensure them winning this game. I don't think that includes another 34-point outburst, especially when your one deep play threat, the one guy that could give you those explosive plays and has owned the Steelers secondary, that being Zay Flowers, not going to be there. Rashad Bateman is not Zay Flowers in any way, shape, or form. He will be missed for this offense here of Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. I like the under in this one. I even like the Steelers team total to look under. If they are a 9.5-point underdog, they're a 9.5-point underdog for a reason. And that is one of the games that, of course, this weekend will take center stage. The Buffalo Bills, also like the Ravens, are going to try to put it together and do something that they have not been able to do yet. And that is, of course, get past Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, and the Kansas City Chiefs on their way to a Super Bowl title. But they'll have an opportunity to start that trek this weekend against the Denver Broncos. So kudos to Denver, by the way, Sean Payton and company, who he should be coach of the year. I don't know that anybody saw Bo Nix being as good as he's been. I don't know anybody that saw the Denver Broncos being a 10-win team and being in the playoffs. But I also know that experience matters in the playoffs. And this is the first time the Denver Broncos have made the postseason in the last 8 years? Yeah, they're going to have some growing pains, and so is Bo Nix. Sean Payton, great job coaching. I think Denver, it is safe to say, is in good hands. They have found their quarterback. They've got a lot of really great pieces on that team, but the defense has fallen off a cliff over the last month and a half, and I don't see them going to Orchard Park and somehow stifling Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills offense. I also wouldn't be shocked if this game flies over the total. But the big question you got to ask yourself at this point is, do we trust the Ravens or the Bills? Can they be one of the two teams representing the AFC in the Super Bowl? Can they actually get it done? Well, it's going to start this weekend, and both those teams are the biggest favorites on the board. Buffalo, right around that 9.5 point favorite, just like the Baltimore Ravens. And let's face it, if we think that they're an 8.5, 9.5 point favorite, Well, they're an 8.5, 9.5 point favorite for a reason. And I think the Bills at home with that experience in Josh Allen, I think they'll have no problem handling business against what has been a great story all year, but one that will likely come to an end here in Orchard Park. So 2 games with 2 of the biggest spreads. And then, of course, we've got a couple of games which people can't seem to figure out whether or not it's a coin flip game. Is it a toss-up between Minnesota and the Rams? Are the Chargers really worthy of being a field goal favorite on the road in the playoffs against the Texans, who were just here a year ago? There are a lot of questions that are going to be answered here this weekend, but we know Detroit and Kansas City, they get to sit home with the popcorn and wait to see who it is they're going to be playing in the next round here of the NFL playoffs. So buckle up. Should be an awful lot of fun. It's a great night in NBA as well as college hoops. We got a lot to discuss in those 2 leagues when Game Time Decisions continues here on the Grid.
So my team didn't win this weekend, but I still did with this app that's taking over the game. Sports Millions Pick'em lets you make quick and easy predictions. Pick your favorite players, go higher or lower, and you can still win big even if your team loses. Plus, the multiplier is insane. With just a few picks, you can win big money. So get on it. They've got a welcome bonus to help you start off your winning streak.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun. I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you've got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circa Sports Million, Circa Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With 2 former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
It's a new era in CFB to start off this year, put on full display.
My take on this game is simple. I know some people will be upset about it. Good riddance to the Pac-12.
Can you do it in terms of the week to week to week?
I don't see a pathway for this team to miss the college football playoffs.
We want to make sure you have those best bets in the entirety of our betting cards. That was Lincoln! But he had that program was already going there!
Only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in here. Game Time Decisions here on the Sports Grid Network. I'm Joe Raineri. Appreciate you stopping by as we are getting ready for a heck of a night in college hoops. We had some great games last night. No more undefeateds as we watched Tennessee. Well, they could have played that game 12 times. They wouldn't have scored enough points to be able to beat Florida there. But all of the undefeateds are no more. But we do have a couple of teams, especially one that was undefeated until they ran into Alabama last game. Now they're at home, and they'll have an opportunity to bounce back. We welcome in our good friend Colby Dan in the house, who, Colby, it's an interesting part of the year with college hoops. Now, a lot of these conference games, some teams realizing, you weren't as good as you thought you were. I thought OU was one of those teams. I think they're in a good spot at home to be able to get right here tonight. What'd you think of that game?
Yeah, I mean, a fascinating game. It's actually probably the game I want to watch most on the whole day. It's even trickier, I think, from a handicapping point of view, because Wade Taylor is out for A&M. He's one of their best players. Originally, I was thinking, A&M's on fire. They've won 8 in a row. So I'm like, why would I want to get in the way of that? Because when you look at Oklahoma's schedule, it has had some nice breaks. They caught teams where there were certain injuries for them. But I kind of think with no Wade Taylor, they're not going to have enough offense to be able to get there. The fact that they're a top 10 team coming in the norm in this place will be, I think, the crowd will be a big factor. So at the end of the day, I know, I was thinking originally when this line was a little bit bigger that A&M, I think it's going to be a close game because A&M's defense is legit. But give me the Sooners to get this done.
Yeah, and they're not going to shoot themselves in the foot necessarily there. Porter Moser, one of the better coaches, he'll have these guys hungry, ready to go here tonight. And I'm with you. No Wade Taylor Jr. for me. I can't back A&M on just their, second road game here. Speaking of road games, we got another one of these West Coast teams newly minted into the Big Ten heading to Indiana. So USC and Musselman head to Indiana. Is it me, or are we seeing maybe the adjustment of what used to be Pac-12 basketball and the physicality of Big Ten basketball kind of colliding here, and the physicality of the Big Ten basketball and the teams like in Indiana seem to be winning out? Do we trust USC in this spot on the road, even getting 7 here?
I thought it was the right side, but not really, because Assembly Hall is a place that I don't think USC, like when you look back at the Pac-12 venues, with all due respect, with the exception to the Arizona Wildcats in Tucson, you get a lot of zeros. You know what I mean? Like going to play a game at Stanford is like going to play a game of, there's no one there. It's like the park right up the street from me. And, same with Cal, same with, at Utah at times, believe it or not known for their fans in basketball, not since the days of Rick Majerus. Even Arizona State can be a zero sometimes. So I think the big adaptation here is these environments. I'm not a big Mike Woodson guy, but I think Indiana is probably the right side here. They've looked a lot better over the past couple games. Getting Ballo back after he was suspended was huge. But USC's been all over the place. To Eric Musselman's, the year one, bringing in a ton of guys in the portal. There's games they look good. There's games they look awful. But give me Indiana to take care of business with that home crowd behind them.
Yeah, a lot of transfer, a lot of guards, a lot of wings for Musselman there. Not a lot of big bangers here. And we're starting to see teams like Illinois impose their will on teams like Oregon and Washington. So it'll be interesting to see the adjustment period for some of these former Pac-12 teams here. What are we supposed to do with Kansas? They're an anomaly to me here. What do you think? I mean, yes, they bounced back and had a big win last game, but what am I supposed to make of them right now? Are we a believer in buying low on Kansas now?
For this game, I am. They haven't played in the Fog since that embarrassing loss to West Virginia without their best player. Might I add, West Virginia didn't have their best player. To me, they proved it. I was on them when they went to Orlando. Now they jumped back, and there's 2 reasons why I like the Jayhawks tonight. One is this is their first game back in the Fog after an embarrassing loss. The other is a couple years ago, Arizona State caught them here. You might remember this. A couple years ago, Bobby Hurley and Arizona State actually went into the Fog and won. So I think it's kind of a revenge game for Bill Self there in that regard. But for big picture, for the team that might have spent the most money in the NIL and just kind of killed it in the transfer portal, I have my concerns. If you're thinking, hey, I got that future for the national championship. There's something about Hunter Dickinson teams to me. They seem at times very lackadaisical. I don't know if that has anything to do with him, but it was with him last year at Kansas. It was with him in Michigan with Juwan Howard's team. So I long term, I have my concern for the Jayhawks, but points.
It's going to be interesting to see. I'm not sure where Kansas goes from here, but I think tonight that would be a pretty good win and tell us that Bill Self's got these guys on track against Arizona State. What are we to make of Illinois, too, by the way? 7-1 at home, I think 4 straight. They had a 2-point loss to Tennessee. Now they're taking on a Nittany Lions team who, let's face it, got kind of put into place last game out here. What are we thinking about this Illinois team? Boy, is that a big number.
Yeah, that's my first thought, too. I mean, Illinois is way ahead of where I had them, though. Credit to you, really, the whole roster. They had so much turnover. But at the same time, this is too big of a number for me. 9.5 or 10. Yes, the other night they were like 3 for 20 from 3 or something like that. But I like this Penn State team. I think they're one of the more athletic Penn State teams they've ever had, at least in the past 20 years or so. Ace Baldwin's been in college for what I feel like maybe that entire 20 years stretch there when he came over from VCU. I think they're a great defensive team, and I think they could give some problems for the Illini. Now, that home crowd is great to win, but 9.5, 10 points, something like that. Give me Penn State plus the points to stay in this game.
Yeah, I'm with you, Colby. It just feels like a monster number. And again, that's not an old Pac-12 team coming down to play Illinois here. We'll have more with Colby as Game Time Decisions continues here on the Grid.
Just 3 games left in this historic college football season. Thursday, Notre Dame.
Notre Dame is definitely one of the top teams in the nation.
Clash with Penn State. Friday, Ohio State looks to slow down the Horns, with the Buckeyes favored to top Texas.
You know what I see? 2 similar plays. Jackpot. Jerry, come on, nimble for a big man.
Follow along for every play and every bet with in-game live game day, only on SportsGrid.
Statement from Giants president John Mara. Joe Shane and Brian Daboll will continue in their respective roles with the organization. As disappointing as the results of the season have been, Steve Tisch and I remain confident in the process that Joe and Brian have implemented.
The Giants, an absolute train wreck, and I love it.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
This was a team that you should have dominated. You've now lost 4 straight. You're heading into the playoffs and you're searching for answers, not just in terms of your offensive line, but your quarterback now.
I just don't see this team peaking at the right time. It was almost like we were anointing Mike Tomlin as the best coach in the NFL 12 or 13 weeks in. Then once they got to the real competition and the attrition started to settle in, it's just not a good football team.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Louis Riddick has interviewed for every job in North America. And I'm not just talking football. I'm talking about every business in North America of any kind whatsoever. Tire companies, grocery store CEOs, shopping malls, insurance companies. What job hasn't Louis Riddick interviewed for?
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in here. Game Time Decisions on a loaded slate in the NBA here tonight. Bunch of games underway. Some of the early slate of games, I'll admit it, I'm disgusted. I don't even want to watch it. I'm holding my nose, but I did back Miami to beat Florida State, as terrible as that is. Colby Dant in the house here. Colby, I wanted to get your thoughts also on a game that's underway, but I also found this one another interesting one. Ole Miss taking on Arkansas. And didn't look good last time out there. Calipari and company. But Ole Miss, are they the team? I've seen nothing but Arkansas money all day coming in here. Were you on that side as well?
Yeah, some of that money was my money because I went on the Razorbacks there. The logic was this. I just think they played really bad the last time we saw them out. People were giving Calipari a hard time because he went to Derrick Rose's jersey retirement number later that night. And another thing is Ole Miss, as much as I do think they're improving, this is year 2 of Chris Beard. They are much better, but still, I don't know that I trust them at this type of environment on the road. I don't think they're there yet. Now, they're still a good team. They're probably deserving of a top 25 ranking, but on the road, I can't get there yet. I mean, the in-game number right now, was 8.5, and I don't advise you to take Arkansas minus 8.5. But if you can get this thing back to where it initially was, anywhere from 2, 3, 4, 5, I think you jump in on the Razorbacks.
Yeah, I like that. I think Arkansas was the right side. I think they're the right look in this one. It was funny. I've been asking everyone that came on here. They were trying to get everyone to bet UConn today, the books, weren't they? Putting them as a slight dog in the spot. Now, Nova is out in front at this one at home, but is the market right here? Should we be fading UConn here on the road in spots?
I went with Villanova, too. Villanova's looked really good lately. And, I think they've won, 7 of 8, if memory serves me correct. And as much as UConn's looked great, I just feel like they're due just for another test. They had that terrible trip to Maui, but since then they've looked great. Got tested really tough by Providence the other night. So I just thought it was a good spot for Villanova. That seems to be, it seems like Kyle Neptune. He's used almost all 9 of his lives, but he's somehow found something over the past couple weeks, and maybe, just maybe, he'll be able to salvage his job there as the head coach of the Villanova Wildcats. But Eric Dixon has been playing awesome. Like, if you have not.
Oh, all right. Well, we seem to get, he was very excited on how well Eric Dixon has been playing for Villanova. In fact, he's been playing extremely well, to the fact that they've got a 7-point lead at the break. 32-25 is what we've got there right now in that game, with number 9 UConn on the road taking on Villanova. In-game number, by the way, UConn closed, getting 1.5 points, I believe, right now. UConn plus 5.5 in game. That total has come crashing down to 130.5 right now. They are at the break. So we got a lot of college basketball still to come here tonight. A lot of these next wave of games should be very fun to watch here tonight. And Colby, in-game number 5.5 there with UConn and Villanova. They're at the break. UConn's down 7. If you took Villanova on the money line, 5.5 enough of a middle for you?
Yeah, I think at 5.5, I still think it's going to be a very close game down the stretch. I don't think this is Nova big, but I'm probably going to stay put. But I would say if you're looking to get in on this game, I would probably at that point, I think UConn plus the 5.5 is probably worth it there. But I have a Nova ticket, so I'm going to sit back, but it should be fun to watch. And watch out, man. This Big East is actually, it went through a period where they looked really terrible, but Georgetown's looking decent. Villanova's starting to look decent. Maybe it's not as bad as we thought it was a month ago.
I think they'll be there, one of the better conferences when it's all said and done. Real quick in the NBA, Colby, were you on Cleveland or OKC tonight?
I took a shot on OKC. I actually, no real logic behind it besides, I pick every game, but I didn't actually place a wager on OKC. But we pick every game over at SGPN.
Not for nothing, that could be a preview of the NBA Finals. I'm just saying. It's tied right now as they're in the first quarter there. I think the NBA should give us more games like that, and maybe the ratings would go up there, Colby. That's all I am saying there. But big NBA slate up here tonight. We'll talk more about that. Colby, we appreciate it. Enjoy the games, my man. Game Time Decisions returns after this.
Just 3 games left in this historic college football season. Thursday, Notre Dame.
Notre Dame is definitely one of the top teams in the nation.
Clash with Penn State. Friday, Ohio State looks to slow down the Horns, with the Buckeyes favored to top Texas.
You know what I see? 2 similar plays. Jackpot. Cherry. I'm limbo for a big man.
Follow along for every play and every bet with in-game live game day, only on SportsGrid.
Statement from Giants president John Mara. Joe Shane and Brian Daboll will continue in their respective roles with the organization. As disappointing as the results of the season have been, Steve Tisch and I remain confident in the process that Joe and Brian have implemented.
The Giants, an absolute train wreck, and I love it.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
This was a team that you should have dominated. You've now lost 4 straight. You're heading into the playoffs and you're searching for answers, not just in terms of your offensive line, but your quarterback now.
I just don't see this team peaking at the right time. It was almost like we were anointing Mike Tomlin as the best coach in the NFL 12 or 13 weeks in. Then once they got to the real competition and the attrition started to settle in, it's just not a good football team.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Louis Riddick has interviewed for every job in North America. And I'm not just talking football. I'm talking about every business in North America of any kind whatsoever. Tire companies, grocery store CEOs, shopping malls, insurance companies. What job hasn't Louis Riddick interviewed for?
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in here. Game Time Decisions on the SportsGrid Network. I'm Joe Raineri. Appreciate you stopping by as we're getting ready, of course, for a little wild card weekend here. The NFL is giving us some intriguing matchups here to start the playoff push. But again, keeping in mind that Kansas City and Detroit are at home. They get to kick back and watch what's going on here. And to me, this is the 2 teams that, without a doubt, deserve to get the bye. As we welcome in Brady Cannon, got the bye, Brady. And it's very scary to think that Detroit and Kansas City get an extra week to prep for whoever it is that they're going to be playing, get the rest, heal up. 2 teams that definitely worthy of the number 1 seed, and we know how number 1 seeds usually do in the NFL playoffs here. But we got a lot of games with a lot of interesting spreads, and your Chargers are one of them, which I found a road favorite. It doesn't happen a lot. It's not impossible, but are the Chargers a worthy favorite on the road against the Texans here?
I think they are, Joe. And it feels like that number sitting out there at 3, and it's a week 3, right? We're seeing a lot of 3s, minus 105. It just feels like the wise guy side is the Texans catching a field goal. But my numbers, when I crunch everything, it comes out to the Chargers as about a 4.5-point favorite. So what I did, and I'm not really comfortable laying the 3 with the Chargers or taking it with Houston. I think Houston is in a good position as a home dog in the first round. We know Justin Herbert's been kind of a little bit banged up all year long. He's going to face a much better defense than he's used to seeing, what he's seen here in recent weeks. So I'm really comfortable with the teaser on the Chargers. And I did a 7.5-point teaser taking the Chargers all the way to +4.5, and then a 10-point teaser all the way to +7. I think getting onto the other side of a field goal, +3, +3.5, +4, +4.5, I think you're safe there with the Chargers no matter what happens.
Yeah, no, it's listen, the Harbaugh effect here. I can't do, but he can certainly do better than the last coach they had that figured out ways to lose games in the playoff, Brady. And as a Charger fan, you know that. The Bills have seen a lot of money. A lot of folks were teasing the Bills down to 2.5, but the teaser protection kicked in from the books. I'm seeing 9.5 now, so I don't think they're going to allow you to continue to use them in a 6-point teaser. But what do you think of the Bills here taking on the Broncos?
Yeah, this is a weird one. And I was able to get this one a little bit earlier. I have it coupled with the Chargers in a teaser, had the Bills down to -1.5, which is a good number. Obviously, well below the field goal. I wasn't even really comfortable with like 2.5 or so. I do think the Bills win the game. And that's another thing we need to point out here, Joe. I'm sure you're aware of this. When we're in the regular season, the team that wins the football game covers the spread over 80% of the time, meaning underdogs, when they cover, they win outright. And when favorites win, they also cover. Well, here in the wild card round, that percentage goes even higher, in the neighborhood of 88% of the time. So really the point spread doesn't even matter that much. You just have to figure out who's going to win the game. I think the Bills win the game. Now, this is a case where I could see the dog possibly covering. The numbers are really skewed for Denver because, you look at some of the competition they played. They played the Panthers. They played the Falcons. They played the Jets. They caught Tampa Bay in a total letdown spot after they beat the Detroit Lions. They played the Raiders twice. When they played stiff competition, they were beaten twice by the Chargers and they were blown out by the Ravens. So I think the numbers, when you're crunching all the stats, they're a little skewed on Denver. Now, I do think this defense is for real. I don't know if the offense can keep up with Buffalo. So I certainly like the Bills in a teaser situation. 9.5, obviously that, probably extends you to a 7-point teaser or a 10-point teaser, but, or maybe even use an alt line or a money line parlay situation. I think Buffalo wins the game and advances. This would be the one where I think the dog might have a chance with that 9.5.
Yeah, and say, listen, there's a couple of games. The Commanders are another one like that, kind of in that where they're not getting a ton of respect. I think experience matters at this time of year, and Tampa, crazy enough, has more of it than the Commanders do, for sure. What do you another one of these teasers that you could use the Commanders in?
Absolutely. I've got them getting 10.5 in one and 13 in another. And I'll tell you what, I would not be surprised at all if the underdog wins outright here. When I just crunch the numbers, I come out with Tampa Bay as about a 2.5-point favorite. And I know that's not much difference from what they are at 3. I think we even saw them tick to 3.5 for a minute. That was quickly bought back down to 3, but it's a pretty steady 3 in the market. I wouldn't be surprised. It's kind of like that Charger game. If it goes to 2.5, it's going to go right back to 3. It's going to bounce around probably. But I think Washington has a real chance here, a same season revenge. That was the very first game of the season for Jaden Daniels, a rookie quarterback, in those bright lights, didn't quite, apparently wasn't ready for that situation, but we've seen him grow up in a hurry. I think Washington's a very different team, and you could argue Tampa Bay's a very different team since week 1 as well. This should be a heck of a matchup. I like that they put this in prime time, but I wouldn't be surprised by Washington winning this one outright at all.
Seen a lot of people using the Rams in a teaser too as well, and it makes sense for a pick'em game. If you can get them over a touchdown, why not?
Absolutely, Joe. And I think teasers are so strong this time of the year because what is this essentially? Week 19? The lines are so tight by this time. Good handicappers, good sports bettors, they've got their power ratings locked in. The odds makers, there's probably no stronger line than a late season NFL line, right? So it's hard to find an edge just by these numbers stand alone. But you tweak that thing 6, 7, 8 points, and yeah, I think you've got a pretty good bet. And with this one, I kind of lean a little bit Minnesota. I think Minnesota wins the game. I make them about a 2-point favorite, 2.5, which is pretty much where we are. But I think you can tease this one either way. The Rams all the way up to, you want to get on the other side of 7, right? So 7.5, Minnesota up to 7. I mean, you could see this line bounce around further where either team is favored by 1 or 1.5, where you can easily get over the 7. I think you probably want to wait for that moment, or you just, do a 7 to 10 point teaser now, but you really want to get that hook on the other side of 7, which whatever team you go with.
Yeah, I mean, a pick'em game at this point. The two teams have already played one another with the Rams winning. So, yeah, I like anything over a touchdown for the Rams in that one. All right, we got another PGA Tour event out in Hawaii, the Sony Open coming up here, Brady. I was at the TGL event down the road for me last night.
Cool, man.
So I have some thoughts on that. But talk to me, lay it down for me. Who should we be looking at here this week in the Sony Open? And by the way, congratulations on the Matsuyama win here that you gave out on many shows here on SportsGrid.
Yeah, that was great to kick off the season that way. And you recall, Joe, we're on a little bit of a run here. We closed 2024 with a winner on Scotty Scheffler, and then we kick off 2025 with Hideki Matsuyama. So that was really cool. See if we can make it a hat trick here. I played Maverick McNeely at 29-1, Taylor Pendrith at 35-1, Harry Hall at 50-1, Tom Hoagie at 60-1, Cameron Davis at 63-1, and Thomas Dietrich at 80-1. And what you'll notice, every single one of these guys played the Sentry last week at Kapalua. An advantage it has shown historically to arrive in Hawaii early, to play the week before, get acclimated to the weather, the time change, what have you. 8 out of the last 11 Sony winners have been in Hawaii the week prior at the Sentry. So I went with that theme. All these guys played brilliantly last week. We'll see if we can cash another ticket this week on Oahu.
I love it. And guess who? Colin Morikawa disappeared on Sunday again. Shocker. We'll see.
Just 3 games left in this historic college football season. Thursday, Notre Dame.
Notre Dame is definitely one of the top teams in the nation.
Clash with Penn State. Friday, Ohio State looks to slow down the horns, with the Buckeyes favored to top Texas.
You know what I see? 2 similar plays? Jackpot, cherry. Remember for a big man.
Follow along for every play and every bet with in-game live game day, only on SportsGrid.
Statement from Giants president John Mara. Joe Shane and Brian Daboll will continue in their respective roles with the organization. As disappointing as the results of the season have been, Steve Tisch and I remain confident in the process that Joe and Brian have implemented.
The Giants, an absolute train wreck, and I love it.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
This was a team that you should have dominated. You've now lost 4 straight. You're heading into the playoffs and you're searching for answers, not just in terms of your offensive line, but your quarterback now.
I just don't see this team peaking at the right time. It was almost like we were anointing Mike Tomlin as the best coach in the NFL 12 or 13 weeks in. Then once they got to the real competition and the attrition started to settle in, it's just not a good football team.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Louis Riddick has interviewed for every job in North America. And I'm not just talking football. I'm talking about every business in North America of any kind whatsoever. Tire companies, grocery store CEOs, shopping malls, insurance companies. What job hasn't Louis Riddick interviewed for?
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in here. Game Time Decisions here on the Sports Grid Network. Joe Raineri, appreciate you stopping by here. As off and running tonight, we've got plenty of college hoops underway. We got some NBA action, including, of course, the game that we were all looking forward to here tonight, and that is with the two best teams in the association as the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Cleveland Cavaliers in Cleveland doing battle right now. Got about 10 and a half minutes to go in the second quarter. 34-28 Thunder out on top right now. They closed as a 2.5-point dog, 2.5 points. Right now they're laying 1.5 in a 34-30 game. You also have the Pacers running away from the Bulls right now, 38-23. And the 76ers back at it against the Washington Wizards right now, 34-25. They're up. Can the Knicks stop the bleeding here on a 3-game losing streak? You would think, as they are at the Garden tonight taking on the Toronto Raptors. The only problem is they're losing here early on. Game just tipped off 7-4 right now. Raptors in front. Tonight, couple of interesting games, including the Clippers and the Nuggets. Clippers up to a 5.5-point favorite in Denver. No joker for Denver here tonight. It was a late scratch in that game last night. He is not playing here tonight. All the Clipper money coming in. And you know how it works in the NBA. When we get complete overreaction like this, then you usually like to take the points with the Denver Nuggets getting 5.5 right now. And then Spurs Bucks, I think, is going to be a fascinating game tonight, too. Spurs were getting as many as 5.5 early, but that has changed. It looks like the money coming in on Wembayama and crew, 4.5 is what we're seeing now, 225.5 in the total. That'll be your late game tonight here with the Spurs and the Bucks coming up at 9:30 Eastern time. So we've got plenty of great NBA action, plenty of great college basketball action, including a couple of big games with Villanova taking on UConn, and Villanova keeps running away with the game right now, 46-36, up 10 against UConn. Yikes. Did not see that one coming as well, since it only closed nearly a pick-em price, but Villanova continuing to be dominant at home. The good news is that all of these games, both in college and the NBA, we've got you covered here as in-game live coming up here at the top of the hour. Scotty Wetzel in the house. He will be taking the ride with you guys, keeping you posted on all of it. Scotty, let's start in the NBA with the game of the century here tonight with Cleveland and OKC. Nice battle back and forth. It's kind of what we thought we would get here. The only question was which one of these two teams was going to hit more threes, because that's probably who the winner is. How did you like this game before it tipped off? Did you like Cleveland to hold serve?
Yeah, listen, there are great trends and numbers for both teams, right, Joe? I mean, it just one team's won 15 in a row, the other team's won 10 in a row. I mean, they're both phenomenal against the spread, so you really throw the trends out the window. It was basically pick 'em, Cleveland laying 2.5, which is pretty much what the number is right now. You got a close game, 34-33. I was leaning towards Cleveland just because they were at home. Really no other reason. If the game was at OKC, I would say, okay, give me OKC. I'm guessing the point spread would be about the same as far as them being favored. So, do like Cleveland. They're down 4 right now, jumped out to an early lead, but down 4. I think that's OKC's biggest lead, but I'd still take Cleveland right now to win at home.
Yeah, I'm with you there. It's 18-1 at home. That's enough for me to want to back the home team in that game there. What do you think? Zion's back with New Orleans, huh? You excited? Worth a look-see here? What do you think?
Well, he was back for a day, but, Zion being Zion, and with the Twinkie store right down the street, they're saying, okay, he's going to go to the Twinkie store tonight. He's not going to be with the club tonight. God forbid we're, paying him $40 million a year that he plays on back-to-back nights. So no Zion tonight. First time all year you had Zion and DeJounte Murray last night, albeit in a loss, but they were so encouraged that they thought that was actually a victory against Minnesota. But that all said, Joe, you know what? Give me New Orleans. I mean, two of the worst teams in the NBA, right? I mean, New Orleans and Portland. They can't beat Portland at home. You know, Portland is 4-17 their last 21 road games. So give me the Pelicans. They're 10-3. I get it, not with this team, but they are 10-3 last 13 against the Jailblazers, as we like to call them. So give me New Orleans at home.
So this is one of those classic spots in Denver tonight with the Clippers where we're hearing no Joker tonight, and everyone has run to the window to back a Kawhi Leonard-less LA Clippers team because he had to go back and deal with the fires in California with his family. Now it's 5.5, Scott. I mean, this is always the spot where you want to take the overreaction and take Denver, no?
Yeah, this is the classic NBA game, 2025. It really is. You know, you got a great player in Wembanyama. You got a great player in the Joker. And, all right, let's go watch the little Spurs in Denver tonight. And neither one is going to play. Obviously, one for good reasons. The other one for he's sick, supposedly. Who knows? I'm going to go under, Joe. I'll stay away from the actual game itself as far as who's going to win. Give me the under 225.5. 18-7 under last 25 meetings between the two. Clippers 8-3 under their last 11 on the road. Take the two big scores out of the game as well. So give me the under 225.5.
I thought the late game was interesting too here with the Bucks and San Antonio. I mean, San Antonio's been very profitable to back, getting a couple of buckets here as of late, taking on a Milwaukee Bucks team. And the total is also interesting here. 225 feels a little low, Scotty.
Yeah, that's what I meant by Wembanyama not playing here. Of course, it was Kawhi Leonard the other game. It's low, but you might not get into Giannis. The Greek freak is really not Greek.
Yeah.
Listed as probable, but left the last game after 3 quarters. He busted his finger up a little bit, so hopefully he will play. I tell you, all numbers point, Joe, to San Antonio, but I'm still going to take Milwaukee. I think this line is just a little bit too low. They've not played well since winning the Cup championship. They haven't. But this is basically almost pick 'em at home. Give me the Bucks tonight. Coming off a nice win against Toronto the other night.
Yeah, I would be shocked if we were going to get defense in that game. Scotty Wetzel, in-game live coming up. We'll see you there, Scotty. We'll close it out next.
Just 3 games left in this historic college football season. Thursday, Notre Dame.
Notre Dame is definitely one of the top teams in the nation.
Clash with Penn State. Friday, Ohio State looks to slow down the Horns, with the Buckeyes favored to top Texas.
You know what I see? 2 similar plays? Jackpot, cherry. I'm nimble for a big man.
Follow along for every play and every bet with in-game live game day, only on SportsGrid.
Statement from Giants President John Mara. Joe Shane and Brian Daboll will continue in their respective roles with the organization. As disappointing as the results of the season have been, Steve Tisch and I remain confident in the process that Joe and Brian have implemented.
The Giants, an absolute train wreck, and I love it.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
This was a team that you should have dominated. You've now lost 4 straight. You're heading into the playoffs and you're searching for answers, not just in terms of your offensive line, but your quarterback now.
I just don't see this team peaking at the right time. It was almost like we were anointing Mike Tomlin as the best coach in the NFL 12 or 13 weeks in. Then once they got to the real competition and the attrition started to settle in, it's just not a good football team.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Louis Riddick has interviewed for every job in North America. And I'm not just talking football. I'm talking about every business in North America of any kind whatsoever. Tire companies, grocery store CEOs, shopping malls, insurance companies. What job hasn't Louis Riddick interviewed for?
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in here. Game Time Decisions on the Sports Grid Network as we close out this edition. Getting ready for In-Game Live coming your way, and we got a lot of great action here across the board tonight in, well, just a whole lot of sports here. We've got plenty of college basketball action underway, including UConn, the two-time defending champs, who were getting points on the road against Villanova. Nova had a 7-point lead at the break. It is down to 3 right now with about 11 minutes to go. UConn 47, Villanova 50 right now in that matchup. Also, some of the other bigger games that we were keeping an eye on. Don't even ask me about Miami, who's turned the ball over 30 times. They're losing at home to the worst team in the ACC, Florida State, 39-25. However, though, Arkansas, who many of us thought would have a good opportunity to bounce back here at home, they are tied with Ole Miss right now, 33 apiece at the break. Alabama also continuing their dominant ways. They dropped 45 in the first half on South Carolina. They were laying 10, 11 points in that game before it tipped off. And right now they are up 17 at the break. Indiana and USC, what a battle. 38 apiece at the break in that matchup there. That should be a whole lot of fun to watch that game unfold in the second half. And in the NBA, Oklahoma City and Cleveland, the two best teams in the association, it's 44-42 right now with about 7 minutes to go in the first half. They're in the second quarter on that one. Some great games still to come here tonight. San Antonio and Milwaukee. That'll be your nightcap as we're awaiting to hear whether or not Giannis is going to be a go in this game. There was some concerns that he might not. He was listed as questionable. We'll have to wait. Game time decision. That number has come down from 5 to 4 now, as San Antonio certainly has proven to be a much better version of themselves than they were a year ago. I do like them getting the points here tonight. I also like the over. I think 225.5 is a little bit low. The Knicks trying to end that 3-game losing streak at home to Toronto. They are up by the slightest of margins right now. We'll see if they can eventually pull this game away and get it done and get back in the win column there. And also just underway, you have the Pistons and the Nets, with the Pistons out front 20-15 here. Of course, tomorrow, don't forget, Notre Dame, Penn State. That'll be the focus. First half of the semifinals of the college football playoff at the Orange Bowl. And boy, oh boy, I tell you, it has been cold in South Florida here. Temperature at kickoff expected to be around 60 degrees, maybe 58 degrees. That is just absolutely brutal. But that should not be a problem, I think, affecting the game one way or the other. We talked to our good friend Kenny White and Chris Thurston, CT Bets, earlier. Kenny White is of the opinion that I am, that the defenses are the two best units in the game there. They are far better than anything offensively I think these two teams can come up with. I think the under, even at 45 and a half, still a good look tomorrow in the Orange Bowl, as I fully anticipate a great classic defensive battle tomorrow in Miami with Notre Dame and Penn State. Chris Thurston all over Penn State in that one, likes him to get it done, as Coach Franklin looking for that all elusive first big game win against a top 5 team. His track record against the best teams in the country, it's we don't have to tell you, anybody who's bet them over the years, they tend to show up very small in these games. But a lot of folks think that Penn State, this is the time for them to advance to a national championship game. And I tend to agree with them, but I love the under. First half and full game tomorrow. That's where I'm looking to go with it. And we've got, of course, Ohio State has a game against Texas the following night at the Cotton Bowl. And do not let the Cotton Bowl, because it's in Texas, fool you into believing there's going to be nothing but Texas fans there. Texas fans don't even show up when they play Oklahoma in Dallas. Trust me, Ohio State will be well represented in that game. All right, get ready for it. Should be a heck of a next couple of days heading into the weekend. Tonight's slate, in-game live. Don't go anywhere. Scotty Wetzel's got you. We'll see you tomorrow here on another edition of Game Time Decisions.
He will never